mwongeye kwirirwa nanone. Reka tubanze dufate uyu mwanya dushimire buri muntu wese uri hano muri gahunda yacu y'uyu munsi yo kwibuka Genocide ku nshuro ya 29 yakorewe Tutsi muri 1994 mu Rwanda. Turashimira buri muntu wese rero uri hano muri iki gikorwa cy'uyu munsi, kikaba ari igikorwa kiri bugirwemo uruhare n'abantu batandukanye, baba abahanzi, baba abari buduhe ibiganiro bitandukanye, ariko byose bigaruka kuri Genocide yakorewe Abatutsi. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Today, Rwanda marks 29th commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. So today it's an occasion for us to remember and to pay tribute to more than 1 million innocent lives lost through the extermination of the Tutsi in Rwanda. Hanyuma rero mu gutangira ndaza kubasaba twese tujye juru kugira ngo tubanze kuririmba indirimbo zubahiriza ibihugu byombi, indirimbo yubahiriza igihugu cy'u Rwanda ndetse n'indirimbo yubahiriza igihugu cya Amerika. I will ask you to stand up so that we can sing the national anthem for both countries. And we will start with the national anthem of Rwanda. And I will ask Dieu Munyanshoza to come forward and lead us in that song. Turasaba Munyanshoza Dieu kugira ngo atambuke aze hano imbere, hanyuma atuyobore mu ndirimbo yubahiriza igihugu cy'u Rwanda. Murakoze.
Rwanda nziza gihugu cyacu, wuje imisozi ibiyaga n'ibirunga, ngo byiduhetse gahorana ishya. Reka tukurate tukuvuga ibigwi, wowe utubumbiye hamwe twese Abanyarwanda uko watubyaye. Berwa sugira singizwa iteka, horana Imana murage mwiza, ibyo tugukesha ntibishyikirwa. Umuco dusangiye uraturanga, ururimi rwacu rukaduhuza. Ubwenge umutima amaboko yacu nibigukungahaze bikwiye, nukutera imbere ubutitsa. Abakurambere b'intwari bitanze batizigama, baraguhanga uva mu bukombe, utsinda ubukoroni n'ampatsi ibihugu byayogoje Afurika yose. None uraganje mu bwigenge, tubukomeye uko turi twese. Komeza imihigo Rwanda dukunda, duhagurukiye kukwitangira, rw'amahoro asabe mu bagutuye. Wishyire wizane muri byose, urangwe n'ishyaka utera imbere, uhamye umubano n'amahanga yose, maze ijabo ryawe riguhe ijambo.
Arakoze. Mu gihe tugihagaze n'ubundi baradushyiriraho indirimbo yubahiriza igihugu cya Amerika. They are going to play the national anthem of the United States of America, and thereafter I will ask you to keep standing for further programs. Thank you. Murakoze. Hanyuma mu gihe tugihagaze turasaba Pastor Rafiki kugira ngo atambuke hano azi imbere adusengere kugira ngo dukomeze gahunda yacu.
Uyu mwanya abanyarwanda twese ndetse n'inshuti zacu duhuriye hano turasenze Mwami Imana yacu ngo duhane umugisha uturemere imitima y'ingamba n'icyerekezo kizima ku gihugu cyacu, uduhere igihugu umugisha n'amahoro, ukomeze imitima yose yagikomerekeyemo, hanyuma ukomeze bose kugira ngo duhurire ku murimo mwiza wo kucyubaka ndetse no kubakana imitima yose yakomeretse. Abari aha bose baha umugisha. Ibiri imbere byose tugiye kugenda tunyuramo ubihagararemo. Kuva dutangira kugeza dusoza, icyubahiro kibi cyawe n'ubu n'iteka ryose mu izina rya Kristo Yesu, amen.
Murakoze. Mu gihe reka nongere mbasabe tutaricara turafata umunota umwe twese duhagurutse, turafata umunota umwe wo kwibuka abazize Genocide yakorewe Abatutsi muri 1994. We are going to take 1 minute of silence as we remember and pay tribute to those killed in the 1994 genocide against Tutsi. Thank you. Murakoze. Mushobora kwicara. Thank you so much. You may be seated. Muri uyu munsi rero wo kwibuka Genocide yakorewe Abatutsi, mbere yuko dukomeza gahunda yacu ndasaba umuyobozi uhagarariye abanyarwanda batuye hano muri Arizona Jean de Dieu kugira ngo atambuke aze imbere atugezeho ijambo ryo gutangiza gahunda yacu uyu munsi. We are going to invite the president of Rwanda community of Arizona to come forward and make his opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, MC. First Counselor of the Rwandan Embassy in the United States of America, Honorable Lawrence Manzi, Honorable Dean of the Thunderbird Global School of Management, First Secretary in the Embassy, Mr. Francis Murindwa, Honorable Mr. Yehoyada Mbangukira, President of USRCA, dear students and the leadership of the Student Association, members of the Rwandan community of Arizona, dear survivors. Let me begin by extending my heartfelt appreciation to the leadership of the Student Association of the Thunderbird Global School of Management and the team that has been organizing or has put together and made all of this and made this day possible. Kwibuka, or remembrance, is an act of honor. Act of honor to the victims that were taken from us. It's an act of honor to the survivors. It's also an act of prevention. When we remember, we say, never again. As we remember, we also thank those who paid the ultimate sacrifice to stop the genocide against the Tutsis in Rwanda. So mine is brief, is to welcome you all and to thank you all for making time to come and pay respect and tribute to the victims of the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. Thank you very much.
Arakoze umuyobozi wa community y'abanyarwanda hano muri Arizona kubw'ijambo yo kudufungurira ku mugaragaro umunsi wo kwibuka. Hanyuma tukaba turi kumwe n'abandi, tukaba turi kumwe na Wallet Dennis, who is the president of Thunderbird Africa Business Club at ASU. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Mariwe, I greet you all and I welcome you. My name is Wala Dennis, the president of the Africa Business Club in Thunderbird. Welcome you here to the headquarters of Thunderbird to commemorate the Kwibuka 29. Thunderbird lays serious emphasis on raising global leaders with global mindsets, which entails respect for people from all across different cultures, different communities. The club would like to appreciate the Arizona Rwandan community for the extended heart of partnership, and we hope that in remembering all those we've lost, that we'll be able to reach out our hands to other communities and people alike, so we'll build stronger communities all across the world. I'd also like to recognize the Dean who took his time. he had an emergency situation with his mom in the hospital, but had to make time to come over to see us. So we appreciate you, Dean. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Rob.
Thank you so much. And we have with us the Director General and Dean of the Thunderbird School of Global Management, Dr. Sanjeev Kaglam. We have the pleasure and honor to invite him to come forward and make his remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, MC. Thank you, Wale Dennis, one of our great Thunderbird students who makes us believe and inspire us and makes us proud that there is a future generation that will bring not only remembrance, but peace and unity to the world, to our societies everywhere, from Rwanda to here in the United States, to the world. I want to welcome our distinguished guests, Deputy Chief of Mission, Lawrence. Welcome, Your Excellency. The First Secretary of the Embassy of Rwanda in Washington, D.C., Francis, welcome. The Rwandan Diaspora President in the U.S., Yehuda, welcome. Vice President Edith, welcome. So many, Pastor, thank you for those spiritual words. Let me also wish all blessings. Salam alaikum, namaste. As was mentioned, my name is Dr. Sanjeev Kaglam, and I have the great honor and privilege of being the Director General and Dean of this magnificent institution, the Thunderbird School of Global Management. But I come to you today not as a Dean or a Director General, not as a professor, but as an African. For those of you who don't know my personal story, I was born in Jinja, Uganda, fourth generation Ugandan and Kenyan. My family went to East Africa in the late 1800s, the early British colonial period, and built the railroads, became merchants and traders and business people. I was born at the source of the Nile, and my father's family in Uganda, my mother's family from Kenya, my father's family in Uganda became the 20th wealthiest family in the country before we were expelled in 1972 by Idi Amin. We lost everything. We went across the border with nothing, went to refugee camps in Italy with the International Rescue Committee, and then were sponsored to the United States. For many years, we didn't know where we would find food or shelter or clothes, let alone education that we try to offer here. So this day of remembrance is very personal to me. Of course, I was not in Rwanda during this tragic time, but when the students came to me and said, could we host this very, very special event? Obviously, the answer was yes. Because here, we at the Thunderbird School have a vision, and that vision comes from remembering the tragedies that humanity has inflicted on humanity, whether it was the Rwandan genocide or World War II. This school was founded on the ashes of World War II. And it was founded by Thunderbird Air Force pilots who came back from that war and believed that there was a better way to peace, and that was through commerce and diplomacy. And so the founding phrase of this school is, borders frequented by trade and diplomacy seldom need soldiers. Seldom need soldiers. And we know that what we are wanting to do in this day of remembrance is to send blessings to all those victims and their families, but all those survivors who continue to remember, to work hard, to look forward, to bring people together, to advance unity, and to advance sustainable peace and prosperity worldwide. Over the last 77 years, the Thunderbird School has trained 50,000 leaders around the world, including some very famous Rwandans. I spoke to one of them this morning, Minister Soraya, who used to be the Minister of Trade and Industry of Rwanda, currently the Deputy Central Bank Governor, and I have the great honor and privilege of calling her my sister, because we are one, because the future of Rwanda, the future of East Africa, the future of Africa is the future of the world. And since my last 5 years that I have had the privilege of being in this position, we have committed ourselves to ensuring that we do everything we can do to be hand and glove, to be arm in arm, to use all of our capabilities, all of our assets, anything we can muster, to not only remember and honor, but to advance and progress Africa's transformation. What has happened since 1994 in Rwanda is nothing short of remarkable. Many can make criticisms, but under President Kagame, His Excellency, what Rwanda has achieved is a beacon of hope for the world. So Rwandans in Rwanda, Rwandan Americans, Rwandans abroad, Rwandans around the world, we as East Africans and Africans are proud because of those accomplishments, not only remembering the tragedy, but what came from it. Now today, my last words I will share with you. This shirt is very special to me. This shirt was given to me by His Grace Desmond Tutu. I had the great honor and privilege of being the Dean of the Desmond Tutu Peace Center for many years. The first time I got to visit the beautiful land of Rwanda was with His Holiness Archbishop Tutu. And we were going around the countryside doing peace and reconciliation, truth and reconciliation sessions. As you all know, he passed this year, God bless his soul. But he had a vision for all of us of Ubuntu, that we are not human unless we connect and touch other humans. We are only human because of each other. And his blessings, his vision, his grace is bestowed upon all of us today. Let me end by saying that we at Thunderbird are a global school dedicated to bringing the world together, to peace, to prosperity, to equity and justice. And because of that, we have launched a 100 million learners initiative to reach 100 million learners around the world with world-class education, translated into 133 languages. It's already in Swahili. Soon will be in the Rwandan national languages, in addition to Swahili. And it's at no cost. It's available for anyone, regardless of background, regardless of race or nationality or gender, income. So please recognize and utilize it, spread the word, because it's only through education, as I learned from my own refugee experience, that we can transform lives and transform the world. So welcome, dear brothers and sisters. You are at home here at the Thunderbird School. Anytime we can do anything to support this wonderful community, which is my community, please know we are here with you, with God's grace. All protocols observed.
Arakoze cyane nyakubahwa Dean kubw'ijambo ryiza atugejejeho, ijambo rikubiyemo ubutumwa bwiza bwo kuduhumuriza ndetse no kudusubizamo imbaraga, tukaba tumushimira. Thank you so much for the message of great hope and comfort to us. Eka dufate rero uyu mwanya turi kumwe n'umuhanzi nawe waje kwifatanya natwe avuye mu Rwanda, Munyanshoza Dieu afite indirimbo agiye kuturirimbira zo komeza kudufasha kwibuka. Reka tumuhe uyu mwanya. Murakoze.
muraho neza. Nanjye nishimiye uyu mwanya twahuye hano kugira ngo dufatanye, nubwo buri gihe twibuka abacu, ariko umwanya nk'uyu duhabwa ni umwanya wo kurushaho kongera kubana n'abacu, tukababwira ko tukibakunda, ko tutazabibagirwa, kandi ko dukomeje ikivi cyabo. Boneho no kubaha indamutso y'Abanyarwanda, cyane cyane abarokotse Genocide, baramenye ngo mbasuhuze, mwakire intashyo zabo. Ngiye kubaririmba indirimbo yitwa Genda Mibirizi. Indirimbo natangiriyeho yasohotse bwa mbere muri 1995. Iyo ndirimbo ivuga amateka y'agasozi, ariko uko mvuga amateka y'ako gasozi buri wese atekereza iwabo, kuko ibyabayeho n'ibyabaye n'ahandi hose. Kadufatanye turi mu ndirimbo Genda Mibirizi. Bangu iteka mpora nibaza icyo mwazize, kandi koko nibyo, ariko nkanibaza n'icyo n'abariya babishe bungutse. Genocide rero icyo nzi nuko ingaruka zayo zakoze kuba kuri twese. Niyo mpamvu rero twakwiye kugira uruhare buri wese kugira ngo aya mateka mabi ntazasubira. Navuga reka dufatanye ririmbe. Kandi nkanibaza icyo n'abariya bungutse, yewe kikanyobera. Genda Mibirizi ukuntu wari nziza, warutuwe na beza, warutatswe n'ibyiza, none ubu wasigaranye imfubyi n'amatongo. Padiri Boneza na Kanyabusozo, yewe Nansengiyu kwa Mukwaya na Kayumba, Kayibanda na Nsabimana. Mu Rwanda seka na Gashugi, Ikeri na Sinayobye, Bayiro na Mariseli, Zeyimana na Kamanzi, Kunda Abatware na Kajanja, Kayitare na Gahigi, Zita Abakuze na Kayiranga, Rwabulindi na Kageme, aho hose imiryango yabo hasengerera. Ibivu yatemye imigezi gukikije nka Nyagataka, Katawuvuga ndetse na Njambwe, Nananga Umurimbo, Nambogo na Cyamudongo, Inkongoro zarashishe. Genda Mibirizi ukuntu wari nziza, warutuwe na beza, warutatswe n'ibyiza, none ubu wasigaranye imfubyi n'amatongo. Uca mu byuma n'akanyeperu, baragahorana na Nzeyimana, bari mu Gakwaya na Hitimana, Gasore na Nzeyimana. Zangwa y'Imana ndabona, Tabaruna ndayambaje, Mugemangango na Gasarasi, Mukankusi na Kayihura, Kamashabe na Gatwa, Mihigo na Gasamagera, Gasana na Modeste, aho hose imiryango yabo hasigaye ngerere. Turamwigende tukibakene, ndamya ko aho mwagiye harasusurutse, naho twebwe mwasize twarasuye genda mbizi ukuntu wari nziza warutuwe na beza warutatswe n'ibyiza none ubu wasigaranye imfubyi n'amatongo hari mu ntagungira na mpozenzi nyiri kazimana nzeyimana mu nyange mu birigi muzuka ndayishimiye kurera ingamije na ntivunwa mu cyaha nandirande ari mu kayonga na kambanda macoko na niyo nzima nigire nyina barurema karekezi na gatera basha na ruzindana ruzibiza na sezari harinda intwari na sezirahiga zeyimana na sembera zamwitana ngenza gakwavu na mushampenzi abo si imiryango yabo tubifurije uruhuko ridashira b'abapfakazi na za mfubyi imiryango yanyu n'inshuti zanyu niduteze na rimwe tuzabibagirwa oya ntitwabibagirwa twese ababakundaga turabasabira tubifuriza iruhuko ridashira muri horana iteka twizeye ko tuzabonana genda mbibiriza ukuntu wari nziza warutuwe na beza warutatswe n'ibyiza none ubu wasigaranye imfubyi n'amatongo 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 murakoze
arakoze Munyanshoza Dieudonné ku ndirimbo aririmbye imwe mu ndirimbo zagiye zifasha abantu kwibuka Genocide kugeza na n'uyu munsi. Umwanya tugezemo rero ni umwanya tugezemo no gucana urumuri rw'icyizere. So the next activity is going to be the lighting of the light of hope, and we are going to have a group of people that we invite to come here and lead us in that activity. Ndahamagara abantu bari bubidufashemo, bari buze kutubanziriza gucana urumuri, hanyuma n'abandi natwe twese turaza kuboneraho. Barimo abana Ornera Kamanzi, Manzi Rugema, abasore barimo n'inkumi barimo Diane Mugisha, Mariera mu babyeyi, Mariera Uwimana, Lucky Ndunguye, hanyuma n'abakuze abashesha akanguhe barimo Jean Marie Vianney Nzagahimana. Reka tubasabe batambuke baze hano imbere, baraza gucana urumuri, ariko kandi bafite n'ubutumwa baza kutugezaho. Buri wese araza kuba atanga ubutumwa kubw'abantu twagiye tubura bitewe n'ibyiciro by'imyaka yabo. Reka mbasabe batambuke baze hano imbere. You are going to, first of all, you are going to read the message, and then after you light the candle.
Women. I'm lighting a candle for women. Women, we are lighting this light in the honor of women who are mothers of Rwanda. Those hearts of Rwandan family were light and lightening its beauty. As the Kinyarwanda saying goes, a better wife makes a better home. Your homes were shining as a reflection of beauty, love, and others. To always better the lives of your husbands, your children, and your parents. Let this light be our message to you. Your light, as you are rocking us in your calm and nice voices, is still active and will never go out. This light reflects the wisdom, the courage, the support that you had for our dear country, Rwanda. Dear parents, you will never be forgotten. You gave us life, and you are alive forever in our hearts.
Urakoze, turagusaba ko utambuka ukajya hariya ugacana urumuri rwa mbere, and then the next will be the one who represents young children. You go to that side, you say your message, and then you come and light the candle.
We are lighting this light in honor of the children killed in the genocide against Tutsi. May this light remind us of your beauty and innocence. You had aspirations and goals, but those evil criminals took it away. We remember you. Dear children, you will never be forgotten. Your love will always shine.
Next.
I'm going to light the candle for ladies. Let this light be shone on the beautiful young girls who are making its beauty. Your wonderful smile used to beautify those around you. Through this light, we are celebrating your lives. All young Rwandan ladies, your country for which you wish the best is now gathered to celebrate your existence. We are taking forward your dreams. Dear young Rwandan ladies, you will never be forgotten. The nobility never dies, it prospers.
We are putting this light as we remember our robust young men. They were hope of their families. They were known for their courage and determination, shining everywhere. Let this light be an expression of our gratitude to your courage and determination. We are standing firm, promising to follow your steps in journey that genocide interrupted, but did not stop because we are here. Our regretted young men, you will never be forgotten. You are, and you will always be alive in our hearts and in our lives. We shall continue growing strong, keeping you in hearts. Mukomere.
Mwiriwe. Ngira ngo amashusho mwarebaga mwese bisha bato baserukiye n'abavuye aha bica abakuru babo bica ibikwerere n'abasaza n'abakecuru ntibabasize. Mpagaze hano mpagarariye kwibuka abo bantu bari bakuze bagize nabi, batwiciye abantu. Turabibuka abasaza bari bakuze bataramaga bagacira abana imigani. Abasaza habaga ibibazo mu ngo mu bantu akababunzi bakabarabunzi, turabibuka. Turibuka abasaza bari bazi imisango, baganiraga neza, turabibuka. Muzahore mwibuka, muzabihagarike, turabibuka. Babishe nabi ariko turabaha agaciro babakwiriye. Turibuka bagiye ariko mu nkundire mbwe n'abasigaye, cyane cyane abasaza nkanjye. Ese ni kuki wasigaye? Ndavuga naho turi aha ngaha, ya mirimo bakoraga ikibi batushije uzacyusa. Musaza uri hano, nagira umusore cyangwa inkumi guhamagara ngo ari icyo wamufasha, mu gihe ushoboye uzabikora bikunze. Murababunzi ntimuzababunganize. Turabibuka. Imana ibana.
Barakoze kudufasha igikorwa cyo kucana urumuri rw'icyizere. Turabashimiye cyane. Hanyuma reka mbasabe namwe ho mwicaye, ngira ngo hari amabuji ahari kugira ngo namwe ubwanyu umucane urwo rumuri rw'icyizere, urumuri rwo kubaho. Muri aka kanya rero gakurikiyeho, tumaze gucana urumuri, turajya mu gikorwa cyo kwibuka imiryango yazimye, yishwe ikazima muri Genocide. Hanyuma tukaba dufite abantu bari budufashe muri icyo gikorwa, bari buze kudufasha gusoma amazina yabo. Now the next activity, we are going to remember and pay tribute to those who perished in the genocide. And I'm going to call upon a group of people who are going to come forward and help us in that activity. They will be reading their names. Thank you.
We remember ndibuka umuryango wazimye wa data wacu mwarimu Emmanuel Rukemasibe, yaratuye irubengera. Umudamu we Venansia, abana babo Gatwaza Emile wiciwe muri kaminuza iruhande, Twaza Mugabo, Esperance Mutoto, Bucana yandi niyo nshuti n'amawe n'Imana biciwe kuri Home Senja ku Kibuye. Ntimuzazima, twararokotse.
Murakoze. Ndibuka Tante Aureli yaratuye Igikondo n'umuryango we wose babishe muri Genocide yakorewe Abatutsi. Yakoraga muri kinyamateka, nta muntu n'umwe wasigaye mu rugo, we n'umutware we n'abana be bose barazimye. Turibuka. Ndibuka onkre warutuye Shyorongi, ubu ni mu karere ka Rulindo, yitwaga Aimable, yarakoraga muri Bener, akaba barabishe bose mu rugo rwabo, babata muri toilette. Yarafite abana 5 n'umudamu n'imiryango yose yo hafi aho ngaho yari yahungiye, barangije babasenyeraho toilette. Turabibuka.
ndibuka umuryango wa Kabahizi ndibuka umuryango wa Loise Kabahizi n'abana be bari batuye igikondo barangwaga n'urukundo bagakunda gusabana umuryango wose warazimye ndibuka umuryango wa Ngarambe Jerome na Venanti bari batuye ku Itaba i Butare n'abana babo bose barazimye ndibuka kandi umuryango wa Venanti na Matilda n'abana babo bagira mu 8 nabo bose barazimye abo bose twibuka nuko twiga tukiro duhagaze mu kimbo cyabo imiryango irenga 15,500 yarazimye kubera genocide yakorewe Abatutsi dufatanye tubibuke.
Barakoze bavandimwe kudufasha muri iki gikorwa cyo kwibuka imiryango yazimye. Ntago tuzigera dutezuka na gato kubibuka kandi tuzabahoza ku mutima. Muri uyu mwanya rero tugiye mu yindi gahunda nkuko nabibabwiye mbere. Nababwiye ko turi kumwe n'abantu batandukanye bari budufashe mu bikorwa byo kwibuka batanga ibiganiro. Hanyuma icyo gikorwa ndaza gusaba Bwana Yehoyada Mbangukira ukuriye diaspora y'Abanyarwanda hano muri Amerika kugira ngo atambuke azi imbere atwakirire abo bantu bari tugezeho ibiganiro. We're going to call upon Mr. Yehoyada, Rwandan Diaspora President in the US, to come forward and introduce the speakers who are in our midst. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and good evening. As they said, I am Yehoyada Mbangukira, the President of the United States Rwandan Community, and it gives me great pleasure to be here as we remember, as we commemorate, and as we honor those who have gone, who have been vanished by acts of violence. We are privileged to have a number of people that will bring messages to us today. And I would like to call your attention to the program if you have it with you. We'll have Professor Gatsinzi Basaninyenzi, who I understand wanted to be here, however, circumstances did not allow him to be here with us this evening. However, he will address us virtually. And we have Beth Mayerovitz, Professor Emerita at Psychology from University of Southern California. And we have a testimony by our own Consuelo Nishimwe, who many of you know. And at some point, we will hear from Edith Mugiraneza, the VP of Ibuka, USA. And also, we will hear from Honorable Lawrence Manzi from our embassy in Washington, D.C. And I want to make a brief remark at this point. One thing that I would like to share with you is that as we remember, as we commemorate, as we honor the lives of those who have left, we realize that there are those who are here who are victims, who are survivors of that experience, horrible experience of genocide against the Tutsi. And briefly, there's a concept in Japanese called kintsugi. A kintsugi is a craft, is a process they go through. If you think of, in our culture, ikibindi, a vase. When a vase is shattered, it's broken, and sometimes we may not appreciate it, or even we don't have any use for it. Ikibindi kimenetse, kenshi kirajugunywa. In the Japanese concept of kintsugi, what they do is they take those pieces of broken pieces of the vase, and they blend them back together using golden strands. And what that does, it reuses what was left to be thrown out. And that concept speaks to the resilience of objects, resilience of human beings, resilience of a collective like we are. So today, as we remember, as we commemorate, we realize that our country was once left for desolation and gone and not to be revived. However, as we are here today, in spite the brokenness of 1994, today we stand as a beautiful, a wonderful, a peaceful country. And for those of you who have yet to visit Rwanda, I would invite you to visit Rwanda. And all those images of brokenness that we heard, that some of us witnessed, you realize that people chose to come together. And coming together they did. And working together they did. And they built a better place. So, yes, yes, yes. Suffering happened. Suffering to some people still happens. But we're here to stand in their place, realizing that where there is a will, there is a way. And when you and I commit to never again, we can indeed remember, we can renew, we can unite, because we have a God that is always near the brokenhearted. Our God that we serve, as we like to say, he roams the world, but he spends his night in Rwanda. May he also spend nights in your hearts, in your minds. May people that you and I interact with here realize that we are a blessed people. And we stand here, and I will show you what happens when the art of kintsugi, the art of bringing the brokenness, when they're done, weaving golden strands into it. If you can see this, this is a beautiful vase that comes out of brokenness. But when God mends people's hearts and unites people in peace, we are strengthened by the bands of gold that God can only weave through the souls and lives of each one of them. May we leave this place today, after we remember and commemorate, know that we are strong people, we are resilient, and our resilience is noticed, and our resilience will help us, unite us, as we continue to remember and stand in the place, in the gap that was left by our loved ones. And I offer my heartfelt condolences, those of you who continue to suffer through the experiences from 1994. It's not easy, but tomorrow is a better place for you and I to be. And as we listen to the speakers today, may we be encouraged, and may we encourage one another, because we are a resilient people that are here today. God bless you. And the next person you'll hear, as the program states, is Dr. Gatsinzi Wasaninyenzi. Thank you again.
I greet you from Huntsville, Alabama. I hope you can hear me. I wish I could be there with you in person, but my work schedule would not allow. I'm so sorry. As I told some of you here in the audience, next year in July, I plan to retire, and work will not interfere with my civic engagements anymore. I hope Zoom will not disappoint. As useful as Zoom may be, it cannot replace a face-to-face interaction. Allow me to begin by thanking the leadership of the Arizona Rwandan community for inviting me to speak at this event. I also want to thank Friends of Rwanda here present, particularly the administration and faculty of the Vanderbilt School of Global Management and members of the Business Club at Arizona State University for their solidarity with us. Reka kandi mpumurize kandi nkomeze abarokotse kuri jenoside yakorewe abatutsi, mukomere bavandimwe. Let me go right into my talk. In 2008, I attended a month-long seminar on social justice in New York City at the Langio Institute for Holocaust Studies and Human Rights in New York City. 3 years later, I attended another conference at the Yad Vashem International School for Holocaust Studies in Israel. I mention this because of two very important lessons that I learned at those two seminars. The first lesson is that genocide can happen anywhere in the world where there is a government toleration of and sanctioning of discrimination, of dehumanization, of persecution, and of killings of members of a group just for who they are. We just heard the story of the dean that was recipe for genocide in Uganda. Lesson number two, that genocide can be prevented if people like us call out social injustice and become activists for social justice. These are two lessons that have informed my study of the genocide against the Tutsi. If one of you asked me why we commemorate the genocide against the Tutsi, the obvious answer would be to collectively remember those who were claimed by the genocide, the more than 1 million people who died between April 4, 1994 to April 7, rather, to July 4, 1994. But another answer would be commemoration is an opportunity for education. Allow me to quote what has now become cliche, Spanish philosopher George Santayana, who is famed to have said that those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. For the sake of those of you who know little about the history that led to the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, here is a brief summary of it. And I'm intentional when I say those of you who know little about the history, for you know something, that the genocide in Rwanda targeted those who were identified to be members of the Tutsi group. So how did killers know who was not Tutsi, who was Tutsi and who was not Tutsi? Before 1994, all adult Rwandans had to have identity cards which classified them as Hutu, Tutsi, or Twa. Those who were identified as Tutsi were doomed to death. Identity cards aside, years of government policies of discrimination against the Tutsi since 1959 had made it known to government officials and to the general population who was Tutsi and who was not. To be fair to history, The issuing of ethnic identity cards began during the 1930s when Rwanda was a colony of Belgium. Before Rwanda's German colonization of Rwanda, colonizers found three groups who distinguished by themselves by the source of their livelihood. According to Jan van Sina, he is the most authoritative historian of pre-colonial Rwanda and author of Antecedents of Modern Rwanda, the Nyiginya Kingdom. Pastoralists, that is those whose livelihood depended on raising cows, were called Tutsi. Those whose livelihood depended on agriculture were called Hutu. And those whose livelihood depended on hunting were called Twas. There was mobility among them. A Hutu who acquired enough cows could become a Tutsi and vice versa. That's the Kinyarwanda word kwihutura. That, however, came to change with colonialism. Eventually, Tutsi, Hutu, and Twa identities became fixed. There was no longer mobility. Following the defeat of the Germans in the First World War, the League of Nations, which later became the United Nations, gave Rwanda to Belgium to rule. In Europe during those days, there was a ideology, what is called scientific racism, the idea that physical features were a mark of one's intelligence. Using scientific instruments to measure the dimensions of individuals' noses and skulls to determine their race, colonialists decided that Rwandans with a flat and wide nose were called Hutu, and those with a straight nose were Tutsis. And they determined that Tutsis were naturally superior to Hutus and the Twas, and they gave them leadership positions. In the 1930s, the Belgian colonial administration issued ethnic identity cards. And because of the characterization of Tutsis as being superior, they removed all Hutu chiefs and replaced them with Tutsi chiefs. Now, fast forward to 1950s. That was the decade of claiming independence from colonizers. So the Tutsi elite, whom the colonial administration had privileged, asked for political independence. Feeling betrayed by those that they had favored, Belgian colonialists switched their allegiance to the Hutu elite, who in 1959 instigated the first of many pogroms, killings against the Tutsis. After Rwanda became independent in 1962, identity cards with Hutu, Tutsi, and Twa labels continued to be issued, and discrimination against the Tutsi became official policy. Memoirs of survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi abound with stories of their discrimination in schools. I have in front of me 3 such memoirs: Kizito Kalima's My Forgiveness and My Justice, Console Nishimwe, who is here present, at least virtually. Her book is Tested to the Limit, a genocide survivor story of pain, resilience, and hope. And Frida Umuhoza, I think she now lives in Australia, whose book, Chosen to Die, Destined to Live, testifies to those horrors. In most cases, the school children did not know they were Tutsis, their parents having not told them for fear of being stigmatized. Allow me to quote from each of these 3 memoirs. In his memoir, Kizito wrote, I quote, "The teacher told all the students who were Tutsis to raise their hands. The instructions made me very nervous. I wasn't sure why. I was about to raise my hand, but the boy standing next to me didn't raise his. I was surprised because he was a distant cousin. I just stood there, wondering why our relatedness didn't make us the same thing. Then a teacher snapped, "Kizito, you are Tutsi, raise your hand." Console Nishimwe also remembers in her memoir the first time she found out she was identified as Tutsi. She wrote, quoting a teacher, "Those who belong to the Tutsi tribe should stand up so we can all know who they are. And then those who belong to the Hutu tribe should stand after that. Tutsis, stand up first," she shouted, as she waited with a pen and notepad. I and a large number of students did not move and remained seated. She looked around and pointed at me and a few other kids and said, you, stand up on the Tutsi side. That's where you belong." End quotation. Ms. Umuhoza also records a similar experience. She wrote, quoting her headmaster, "Hutus, stand up." About 2/3 of the children stood up confidently, looking around at their classmates who remained seated. As young as they were, they sensed the strength of their position. Mr. Morris counted the children standing and motioning for them to sit down, then ordered, "Tutsi, stand." I had made up my mind that I would stand when my three best friends, Claudette, Sophie, and Honorette, stood up. But when Honorette had stood up as a Hutu, Claudette had motioned to me not to stand, leaving me confused. I was not really sure which tribe I belonged to, but I knew I must be the same as Claudette because she was my best friend. I hesitated. Seeing Claudette stand as a Tutsi, I decided to stand too. Just at that moment, the headmaster barked, "Come on, be quick about it. I don't need any of your silly behavior." This caused the Hutu children who stood moments before to laugh at us and left me feeling cheap. As much as these kids did not know they were Tutsi, they weren't aware either that there was an official culture of impunity, of government-sponsored killings of Tutsis. Genocide studies tell us that pogroms or organized massacres of a particular ethnic group are some of the preludes of genocide. In Rwanda, the first of the many pogroms against the Tutsi began in 1959, following what has been dubbed the 1959 Hutu Revolution. The massacres, which are reminiscent of the Kristallnacht in Nazi Germany in 1938, were sparked by news of an attack of a prominent Hutu leader, Dominique Mbonyumutwa, by a group of Tutsi young men. Then in 1963, another pogrom, which British philosopher wrote about, saying that they were the most horrible and systematic human massacre we have had occasion to witness since the extermination of Jews by Germany. 10 years later, in 1953, there was to be another pogrom. Then in 1990, the pogrom against a Tutsi community known as the Bagogwe, a pogrom which Diogene Bideri has written about in Le Massacre de Bagogwe, un prélude au génocide des Tutsi. In 1992, another pogrom against the Tutsi in Bugesera. Christian Shere, author of Genocide and Crisis in Central Africa, was correct when he said, quote, "These pogroms were viewed as the final rehearsal for genocide." In killers' minds, to kill a Tutsi was an act of cleansing society of undesirables, people who had been called cockroaches. In the 10 stages of genocide, Gregory H. Stanton wrote, identifies dehumanization as one of the stages in the process that culminates in genocide. He wrote that dehumanization entails one group denying the humanity of the other group. Members of it are equated with animals, vermin, insects, or diseases. At this stage, hate propaganda in print and on hate radios is used to vilify the victim group. They are equated with filth, with impurity, with immorality. Hate speech fills the propaganda of official radio, newspapers, and speeches, end quote. In Rwanda, during the genocide against the Tutsi, a broadcaster on Radio Television Libre de Mille Collines, which was dubbed hate radio, used a language to dehumanize Tutsis, calling them rats. He said, quote, "In truth, all Tutsis will perish." This was being broadcast on the radio. They will vanish from this country. They are disappearing little by little, thanks to the weapons hitting them, but also because they are being killed like rats. So, in regards of a conclusion, why is it important to know this history, the history that led to the genocide against the Tutsi? Because, as I said earlier, genocide can be prevented. Indeed, that is one of the reasons why we commemorate the genocide against the Tutsi, so that what happened never happens again. Almost 3 years ago, the Rwandan government established a new ministry, the Ministry of National Unity and Civic Engagement. The ministry I want to submit was established in the context of a vision of a kind of society we in Rwanda want to build. A society in which all Rwandans are equal, a society in which discrimination against any group is not tolerated, indeed is punished. Not too long ago, women in Rwanda could not inherit their parents' property. It is not so today. Not too long ago, if the quota had been filled, you could not go to school simply because of the ethnic group your identity card or your parents' card said you belong to. It is no longer the case today. Those cards with ethnic labels are a thing of the past. In a nutshell, the lesson we learned from studying the genocide against the Tutsi and the other genocides can be applied to any society anywhere. Any government which tolerates discrimination, dehumanization, persecution, and killings of members of a group simply because of who they are leads to genocide. Lest we forget, the genocide against the Jews, also called the Holocaust or the Shoah, was carried out by a government that called itself civilized, the Nazi Germany. There are many resources for those of you who want to know more about the genocide against the Tutsi. For audiovisual learners, there is a PBS documentary entitled Ghosts of Rwanda, which is available on the internet. There is also a movie entitled Sometime in Rwanda. In one scene in the movie, a high school teacher refuses to divide students into Tutsi and Hutu groups, as students do, and they are killed indiscriminately. Some of the most important resources, of course, are memoirs of survivors of the genocide against the Tutsi. The Shoah Foundation at the University of Southern California has a digital archive of testimonies by survivors of the genocide. We also have many memoirs. I wish I was with you to display the books. I have Console's memoir, Console Nishimwe's memoir. I have Kizito, My Forgiveness, My Justice, another memoir. I have Immaculée Ilbagiza, Left to Tell. I have those of you who speak French. There is Ma Mère m'a tué, Moi Le Dernier Tutsi. I don't know if you can see the cover. And a most recent one, Do Not Accept to Die by Dimitri Sisi Mukanyigira. Indeed, the documents about the genocide against the Tutsi abound. Thank you so much for the time. And I look forward to another event like this next year.
akoze ku butumwa bwiza duhaye kandi no kutwumvisha ko kwibuka ari inshingano ya buri wese ndetse ko jenoside atari ibintu byagwiririye abantu ahubwo byateguwe. Muri uyu mwanya rero tugiye kongera turarike Munyanshoza yongera agaruka imbere aturirimbire. Murakoze. We invite the artist Munyanshoza to come forward and sing for us again. Thank you.
Murakoze ngiye kubara indirimbo yitwa Umunsi Avuka, indirimbo ikomoka ku mateka y'umwana wavutse amaze kumenya ubwenge asanga nta sekuru afite, nta na nyirakuru ndetse nta na papa we. Akabaza abaje mama we impamvu atabona papa we, amubwira ko yishwe muri 76 emerende ikimara kujyaho, amubwira ko sekuru na nyirakuru bishwe muri 59, ariko yaje gukomeza agira ibyago 94 umuryango we nawo wose baramara. Nurimba amateka rero y'uwo mwana atekereza uburyo umuryango we wishwe, ari gusanga no muri rusange twese ari kimwe. Murakoze. Umunsi avuka yaje ameze nk'abandi, yasoromye inkeri yariye n'imfumba, ajya kuba mukuru yabajije umubyeyi igituma papa we atamuzi atamubona. Umubyeyi atuje yamujyanye mu cyumba, amubwira ko se yakubiswa agahwera, nyamara uwamwishe atigeze anabiryozwa. Yumva ikigatura gikebanyije ubwenge, yongeye kubaza umubyeyi wamureze abona amushengura, ahitamo kumureka. Nyuma gusobanukirwa ntibyatinze, kuko inshuro nyinshi yahizwe ukware. W'94 byose bijya guturika, ubwo imyitozo yabanje ubwo bwose, yashyizwe ahagaragara u Rwanda rukazima. Yibaza niba yaragumiye Imana. Nzahora nzirikana abana b'u Rwanda batsembe bazira uko Imana ibahaye. Nzaharanira ko bitongera kubaho. Imbarutso urwitwazo rwabaye indege, yahiriye Kigali ku Kibuye baricwa. Ntibagutamaza umugambi wa kera, igihugu cyose gicura imiborogo. Barumuna be n'abakuru be nta n'umwe, n'akagakecuru kishwe by'urubozo. Yayobewe n'aho umurambo wapfuritswe, agarutse arenga bibereye u Rwanda. Akayira nk'aka kanditswe n'amagorwa, ni kamwe ku benshi banyuranyije amage. Twibutsa abacu twabuze tubakunda, dusabira ihirwe Rurema itabima. turibuka mwebwe mwizeraga Imana mugana urusengero musaba kurokoka barahabasanga bishi barabatikiza habaho ibirenge uruvugiro bagenzi nzahora nzirikana abana b'u Rwanda batsembwe bazira uko Imana ibahaye nzaharanira ko itongera kubaho mwe mwasaranganyije inzira muhunga umwajya mu gihuru isura atakibyumva undi mu nzitane z'amahwa y'imishuri nyamara ubuzima bwacika mureba mwebwe mwahisemo gutinza babica muhitamo intambara ku buryo bushoboye mukoresha amabuye murwanya amasasu babatwara ubuzima mugenda gitwari wowe muri parafo arambye w'iminsi wo ku rusenge bamumano yatabona murumuna wanyu yihishaga mu rwina umuryango wose urazima muragenda ndibuka imodoka yazanye nyakubyara ayiha umugore n'abana ngo arebe yatera kabiri imodoka baratwika ubimenye ujya ahagaragara barakwica nzahora nzirikana abana b'u Rwanda batsembwe bazira uko Imana ibahaye nzaharanira ko itongera kubaho wowe wari ufite amafaranga unatunze bagumya kukunyaga bagushuka kukureka ugumya kwizera sakindi iratinda wagiye uganira n'abajya kukuroha imyaka ni myinshi ishize turabababaye ingoma ibihumbi tuzibuka iteka aho muri tuzi ko Imana ihatuje tubasezeranije kutazaba ibigwari aho muri tuzi ko Imana ihatuje tubasezeranije kutazaba ibigwari aho muri tuzi ko Imana ihatuje tubasezeranije kutazaba ibigwari aho muri tuzi ko Imana ihatuje tubasezeranije kutazaba ibigwari aho muri tuzi ko Imana ihatuje tubasezeranije kutazaba ibigwari.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the song. As previously introduced by Yehoyada, I would like to once again invite the next speaker, who is Professor Beth. Her presentation is entitled Understanding and Addressing Secondary Trauma. So those on live streaming team have her on board. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you very much for inviting me to join you today. My name is Beth Meyerowitz, as you've already heard, and I was a professor at the University of Southern California, studying trauma and traumatic stress. I bring warm wishes from Los Angeles for meaningful and peaceful commemoration. So today I'm going to be talking briefly about traumatic stress, and then Edith has gathered some questions that I'll try to address if we have time. The main thing I want to mention about traumatic stress is that it can be very difficult to identify and to know when one is experiencing it. And the first step in approaching it or dealing with it is to recognize that it's happening. So I want to mention three things that complement complicate that issue of recognizing when traumatic stress is happening. First, it can be difficult to know when we're experiencing it in our lives. When traumatic stress occurs, the individual goes into survival mode. Thoughts, behaviors, emotions, our physical reactions are all designed to protect us and to protect us from imminent threat and danger. We see imminent danger all around us, and we work to protect ourselves from that. This sense of imminent doom can lead to being overprotective of ourselves and of others. It leads us to live in a survival mode where we're living moment to moment just to protect ourselves from danger. And this can lead to really complicated set of reactions because traumatic stress can be varied and even contradictory. It can lead to very strong emotions, sudden anger, outburst of anger, unexpected tears, constant irritability, impatience. Or on the other hand, it can also lead to numbing, a lack of almost any emotion, not anger, not sadness, not joy, not happiness, just a feeling of emptiness. So we can have overreaction or underreaction. It can lead to intrusive thoughts, ideas popping in our mind when we don't want them to, nightmares bringing up memories that we don't want to have. But on the other hand, it can also make us unable to remember important things from the past or even forgetful in our daily lives, to forget things that we ordinarily would remember. Again, these opposite reactions. It can lead to being hypervigilant of our surroundings, looking everywhere, always wondering, is there danger right over our shoulder? Where might something dangerous be happening? Tracking everything, worrying every minute our children are out, feeling nervous in new settings. Or it can lead to tunnel vision, being so focused on some things that we don't see the context or the bigger picture. So it can be hard to identify. The second thing that can be confusing is that there's no definite timeline for these reactions. People sometimes expect that there will be a gradual recovery, a straight line of decreasing concerns over time, or that these reactions will show up at predictable times, maybe in April. But that's not necessarily how it works. For some people, the reactions can come much later. Or maybe they come and go as other life events or reminders or stresses or even happy events bring things to mind and start that process again. Sometimes it can take years to start having some of these experiences, even 29 years. The third factor that makes it difficult to recognize post-traumatic stress is that you don't have to be personally present during a stressful situation in order for the stress to occur. This is the idea of secondary traumatic stress. Traumatic stress can be contagious in a sense. These same types of reactions that I mentioned earlier can show up for loved ones, children of genocide survivors, sometimes in slightly different forms, but similar. In addition, the secondary traumatic stress can lead to feelings of guilt, anger, a sense of unsafety in the world, and of not being understood. So I mention these three areas because it's difficult to recognize when post-traumatic stress is affecting us. The reactions might be contradictory or complicated. The timeline might seem random, and the reactions might not even be directly related to our own experiences. And the first step in dealing with traumatic stress is to recognize it in ourselves or in our loved ones, our children. To be able to take a step back and to say to yourself, I see that I'm getting very angry. Does the situation I'm in right now call for that level of anger? Or is something from my past affecting that? And then to start to see if there are triggers that start off these situations, and if so, to prepare for them. Perhaps to write about your own experiences, seek out opportunities to talk at your own pace and in your own way to people who will understand. But there's a fourth thing I also want to mention, and this relates back to the very moving message we heard earlier about resilience. that in addition to post-traumatic stress, people who go through very traumatic experiences, either as primary stress or secondary stress, also can develop what we call post-traumatic growth. There can be a sense of growth that can come from these experiences that can serve well in life. Psychologists have identified this post-traumatic growth and people who experience intense traumatic stress, such that they are more empathic to other people's suffering. They're more ready to stand up for what's right. They're more appreciative of others, of small kindnesses, more in touch with what's important in life. This doesn't always happen, but it can. As with other aspects of traumatic reaction, it can happen even many years later. So I don't want to suggest that this is an entirely negative experience. With that as background, one of the important questions that was raised is, and I'm just going to read this from what Edith sent me, how do we prevent the transmission of trauma? I think that's such an important question. And I want to suggest a few things that we could consider. One, I believe that the Rwandan community is already doing a lot to prevent that. One of the things we know from research with the children of Holocaust survivors is that the first generation of survivors tended to keep secrets, tended not to talk about what was going on, not to commemorate, not to do what you all are doing here today. Not keeping those secrets is a very important first step. Another thing that's important is identifying these reactions in ourselves and doing what we can to not convey that to our children. One of the things that psychologists know is that secondary trauma is not conveyed, it's narrated. It's conveyed, it's not narrated. It's not that we tell this to our children, it's that they see it, they experience it in us. So to make times to talk to children about it, to help them understand what may be going on for them, to try to avoid that overprotectiveness, and to teach self-care. And by that, one of the important things to do is to try to bind, to put borders around what might issues of post-traumatic stress so their tentacles don't leak out into all the rest of life. One of the things I'm going to suggest for that is a calming breathing exercise. Research has shown that the physical and psychological impact of traumatic stress can be contained when there is a calming breathing exercise that the body gets centered. One of the ways to do that is called the four-corner exercise. It's a very easy exercise where you simply breathe in for the count of 4, hold your breath for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, and hold the exhale for a count of 4. That simple breathing exercise, if you practice it and do it several times, I usually, when I'm doing it myself, I usually do it 4 or 5 times, can calm, and that may be a good way to start certain conversations. Another question that came up is about telling our stories to our children. And I think that it's such an important thing, and an important thing to do at age-appropriate times in an age-appropriate language. I want to just point out a book that some of you may be familiar with called, this is by Claver Iracosa, called The Child is Me. And in this, he describes in a way that he wrote for his own children, his own experience. It goes through his own experience in an age-appropriate way. As he says on the book, it's for ages 5 to 13 with parental guidance. And it's a way to begin the conversations and to start to answer the questions children might have about, why don't I have a grandma? When my friends do, where are my aunts and uncles? Other questions that children will typically start asking at a time when you may be ready to respond to them. Another question that was raised is, what is the importance of the commemoration events in terms of personal healing and collective healing? And I think the answer is very important. And that goes back to the point I was making earlier about trying to not keep secrets. Children can tell when secrets are being kept, and it creates a sense that there's a danger in something I don't know. So being able not to have those secrets through commemoration at age-appropriate time. One thing I do want to mention, one of the things that traumatic stress really exacerbates is a sense of being out of control. During the genocide, people lost all control. The healing process requires regaining that sense of some control, some agency in life. So I do not believe that people should be forced to tell their story, should be forced to bear testimony, or should be forced to take part in commemoration, as I'm sure you do not believe either. So the importance of commemoration is to regain that sense of agency, to allow people to have control over how much they want to engage, and then to have the community there. One of the very strong things, very strong healing opportunities is the very strong Rwandan community in the United States and in many other countries. And that community, as we see here today, provides a tremendous opportunity for healing and for raising children without the traumatic stress that might accrue. I would be happy to answer other questions if you have them, but I think that was sort of the main points that I had wanted to make. Thank you again for inviting me and for listening.
Thank you so much. I think that was a great presentation. That was a masterpiece. There are so many recommendations, so many lessons which are beneficial to all of us, and more specifically for the genocide of the survivors of the genocide. Arakoze rero ku butumwa bwiza atanze ku biganiro byiza aduhaye ndetse bidufitiye umumaro twese muri rusange, ariko by'umwihariko abacitse ku icumu rya jenoside. Reka twongere mu gihe twitegura undi rubuze kutugezaho ikiganiro, twongere twakire Munyenshoza aturirimbire indi ndirimbo.
dufatanye turimo indirimbo imfura zo ku mugote. Imfura zo ku mugote kimwe n'imfura z'iwacu hirya no hino, bose bishwe kimwe n'aho bari kumwe. Reka dufatanye twibuke turimo iyo ndirimbo. Murakoze. Heza ku musozi wa Mvuzo kwa Nyaruguru, ntereye amaso mu mpinga ya Mugote, mbona imigezi nyonyomba wibaya n'ibishanga, isiza n'imisozi myiza, ibyo byiza bidutera kwibuka imfura zacu zo ku mugote, abo batuboneye izuba nimucyo tubibuke tunabasuhuze. Mbe Nyaruguru inshuti y'abeguraho n'agahima twitaga Ruganda ku nkomere, ijoro rusenga ariwe Gikamatacumu, na Nkerabigwi twitaga Ruturamugabo. Uraho rwikabisa twitaga runihura ingogo nawe ntacyawukura twitaga nkubito gakindi bizimungu n'agatera twitaga imbogo nimwakiri ntashize mwasize twese turabibuka cyane mu mutaramo no mu nkera zo ku mugote
Fura zo ku mugote turabibuka twese ubutwari bwanyu twawufashe w'impamba mwatubaniye neza natwe abanyu tuzahora tubibuka mwataramaga ku mugote mugabira n'inka abariko mutaramira kwa Nyagasani ntidusoze urugendo twizeye kuzataramana namwe iteka ndacyavuga bakambwe nimwe dukesha iyi nganzo mu kirenga mutashye mbuto nziza y'urukundo ishyaka n'ubutwari mwasize muraze twese ntabwo yubahirijwe kuko abo mwari mwadusigiye bari basigaye baduhoza itsembabwoko ryarabatuvukije none ubu dusigaye turi imfubyi mbe muragwa twitaga impunga n'agatabazi twitaga kwa mucyo wacu ukizi Pierre na Rwemarika w'indatwa Gahirima na Mugabo w'indekwe bacyuma
urahwena gashejana zirumbanje mukomeza marshali na bizimungu Jean de Dieu imutsubize na ba mwarimu Kabayiza Turo Gashotsi Kagabo Hobiri na Ruvuga bigwi subize musirikari Rufara na Kabo y'ibibwiri na Karaha Muheto na Shogoza wo mu Kinzuzi muradusubize n'abandi inshuti zo ku mugote Harusiza Fideli na Nkurikimana Deo n'abandi bose
Fura zo ku mugote turabibuka twese ubutwari bwanyu twawufashe w'impamba mwatubaniye neza natwe abanyu tuzahora tubibuka mwataramaga ku mugote mugabira n'inka abariko mutaramira kwa Nyagasani ntidusoze urugendo twizeye kuzataramana namwe iteka twese ababuza bacu twararize turihanagura ariko twibuka ko na Yezu umwana w'Imana nawe yamenewe amaraso ukarengane Yezu umwana w'Imana uramenya abo barenganye nkawe mubane nabo iteka ryose natwe tubahoza umutima Bebukuzagara na Loizi William Chantal Theophila na Mushimire mukorere Kabayisenge Mutesa na Angelique mudusuhurize murangwa na bene Forongo
utubwirire Donatira Mukamuyigwa muti abo wategaga ibisage barakubukwa no mukabirege, mukamunana na kamogi, mukamutara na urere y'umubyeyi wacu. Amajwi meza n'umudiho byanyu ni umurage mwiza tuzawusazana.
Urazo kumugote, urazo kumugote, turaribuka twese. Ubutwari bwanyu twabufasheho impamba, mwatubaniye neza, natwe abanyu tuzahora tubibuka. Hataramaga ku mugote mugabira n'inka, abariko mutaramira kwa Nyagasani, ntidusoze urugendo twizeye kuzataramana namwe iteka. Urazo ku mugote turaribuka twese. Ubutwari bwanyu twabufasheho impamba, mwatubaniye neza, natwe abanyu tuzahora tubibuka. Hataramaga ku mugote mugabira n'inka, abariko mutaramira kwa Nyagasani, ntidusoze urugendo twizeye kuzataramana namwe iteka. Urazo ku mugote turaribuka twese. Ubutwari bwanyu twabufasheho impamba, mwatubaniye neza, natwe abanyu tuzahora tubibuka. Hataramaga ku mugote mugabira n'inka, abariko mutaramira kwa Nyagasani, ntidusoze urugendo twizeye kuzataramana namwe iteka.
arakoze kandi ko gukomeza guturirimbira indirimbo zirimo kudufasha gukomeza kudufasha kwibuka. Hanyuma umwanya ugiye gukurikiraho turi kumwe na Vice President wa Ibuka USA, Madame Edith Umugiraneza, nawe afite ubutumwa agiye kutugezaho, reka tumusabe atambuke. So we are privileged to be with the Vice President of Ibuka US, Edith Umugiraneza. Let's give her the floor. Thank you.
Mwiriwe, nimukomere, ntabwo byoroshye guhagarara hano ngo umuntu avuge nyuma yo kumva zino ndirimbo. Ntabwo byoroshye kugira icyo umuntu avuga muri iki gihe, ariko Imana iradushoboza. Mpagaze hano mu izina rya executive ya Ibuka US, ariko muri sale ntabwo ari njyenyine wo muri executive. Hari umuvandimwe Divine Mugabo, namusaba nawe agahaguruka akabaramutsa. Dear ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests and fellow Rwandans, as a representative of Ibuka US, it's an honor to stand before you on this solemn occasion to commemorate the 29th anniversary of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. Ibuka US brings together survivors of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi living in the United States. Ibuka US was created in 2020 with the mission, among others, of
preserving the memory of the victims and advocating for survivors to promote their well-being. Ibuka US has a leadership team at a national level, but also regional units in Washington State. Thank you. Yes. Ibuka US has a leadership team at national level, but also regional units in Washington State, Oregon, Maine, DMV, and Utah. Having those units makes effort to support survivors meaningful and achieve our mission. We ask survivors, wherever they are, to be organized, and it takes only 3 survivors to open a unity according to Ibuka US bylaws. Bivuze ngo namwe muri hano muri Arizona, muri benshi muturuka hirya no hino, ariko mwashyira hamwe mugahuza imbaraga mugakora unity hano muri. As we gather here today to remember the millions of innocent lives lost during the genocide, we honor their memory and we pledge to ensure that such atrocities never happen again. We recognize the resilience of the Rwandan people who have come together to rebuild their country and promote unity and reconciliation. However, we must also acknowledge that the legacy of the genocide still lives on, and the survivors continue to suffer the consequences. We must continue to support and empower the survivors to ensure that they can live fulfilling lives. As we commemorate the 29th anniversary of the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, let us remember the ongoing struggles of the survivors. Let us support organizations that are working tirelessly to support and empower them. And in this regard, Ibuka US is fundraising for an ultrasound machine to enable AVEGA clinic in Kigali to diagnose diseases from rape and sexual assault that women accounted during 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. In a moment, you will hear from one of the survivors, Console Nishimwe, who witnessed the first hands of those atrocities. Let us also use this remembrance period to recognize and salute those who sacrificed everything to stop the genocide. Humanity failed Rwandans, but Rwandans rose back to take their destiny in hand and stop the genocide. We salute the RPS soldiers who did the possible and the impossible to save us. The best gift we can offer them is to see us striving in our lives. This way, the sacrifice will not have been in vain, and the commemoration tomorrow will ended become a reality. As Rwandans, let us continue to work towards building a peaceful and prosperous society in Rwanda, where the memory of the genocide serves as a reminder to never let such atrocities happen again. Twibuke, twiyubaka. Mukomere.
Arakoze cyane ku ijambo atugejejeho. Reka nkuko rero yaramaze no kubivuga, tugiye kwakira umwe mu barokotse Genocide yakorewe Abatutsi. Ngira ngo hari igihe abantu bashobora gutekereza ko umuntu yavuga Genocide ari ibintu biba bisanzwe cyangwa umuntu yimajinnye, ahubwo ni ibintu byabayeho abantu baciyemo, bazi uburemere bwabyo n'ingaruka zabyo. Niyo mpamvu rero tugiye kwakira Console Nishimwe kugira ngo atugezeho ubuhamya bw'ibyo yanyuzemo mu gihe cya Genocide yakorewe Abatutsi. So allow me to invite Console Nishimwe to share with us a recount of series of events she went through during the 1994 genocide. Abantu babidufashemo kuri live.
Good evening, everyone. Muranyumva mwiriwe mwese. Murakoze, thank you very much, MC, for your kind introduction. I thank the Rwandan community in Arizona for inviting me tonight, even though I couldn't be able to be there in person due to my work. So, but I would have been happier to be with you. But thank you very much for inviting me to be with you, Excellencies, friends of Rwanda, fellow survivors. Ndabahobeye, ndabashuje mwese. Impore mwese, ntabwo byoroshye kuri uyu munsi twibuka abacu twabuze mu gihe jenoside yakorerwaga abatutsi yabaga muri 1994. Thank you for having me tonight. So it's not very easy, as you can hear from fellow survivors, Edith and everyone else who spoke earlier. It's not easy, even though for any survivor telling the testimony, it's not easy. So you are reliving every experience you've gone through during that period, especially now. These are the days we were hiding. We were going through unimaginable horrors. So it's not very easy. So as they mentioned earlier, Dr. Basani Jens mentioned earlier that I wrote a book. It's called Tested to the Limit. It talks about my experience of the things that I've endured during that period in 100 days. So I come from the Western Province in a place called Kibuye, in district, Karongi district, in an area called Rwengera. You've heard one of, I think it's Jean de Dieu mentioning a family. I know that family very well. And it's hard to hear, as you could hear from his voice, how hard it was for him to talk about it. So many families where we come from, their families are completely wiped out. So, and as you can imagine, it's not very easy. As he was mentioning that, it was very hard for me because knowing that family very well, and no one is alive in that family, it's hard. So when I was born in the family of 5 children. Luckily, I had both parents. My parents were teachers, and we were 5 children in our household. I was the oldest in my family. I was 14 years old. My sister was 11 years old. My 3 younger brothers were 9 years old, 7 years old, and 16 months old. So we were all young. And before the genocide, I was very fortunate that my parents gave me a home where I felt loved and cared for, like any other kid. Even though I was going through experiences you've heard earlier, being mentioned about being asked if you're Tutsi, stand up in the classroom. It was not easy as a kid, but at the same time, I came in a home where my parents gave me love and affection. So I'm truly grateful for that I was able to receive that, at least, because there are many fellow survivors who were not able to have that. So they lost their parents early on before they had that in their lives. So it's hard for me to even think about that, but I'm truly grateful for at least I was able to get that before horrible things happened to me. So where we lived, it was not very easy, as you can imagine. Of course, we had to go into hiding for 3 months. And during that period of 3 months, I had to face unimaginable horrors like any other survivor. So, and I remember, because where we lived, it was not too far from the mayor's office, the communal office, and many of the Tutsis were gathered there. Many of them went to the Gatwara Stadium, which is one of the area many Tutsis were murdered, including many of my family members. And I remember me and my family following the crowd going to the stadium. That was the beginning of us to seek refuge, to figure out somewhere to hide, like, with everyone else. And the image I always have in my mind is a crowd of people walking on the street, going to the stadium, women and men, all mothers and fathers. And I never forget the tears and the singing of asking God help us through these trials and tribulations. And when our homes, every home of a Tutsi in the hills where we lived, all the homes were being burnt, destroyed. There were noises everywhere, calling us Tutsis. They have to kill all of us, including little children. It was horrifying. At that age I was, to hear. Suddenly, you have to go to find somewhere to hide. You don't know enough what you're going through. So, and it was horrifying for me to even see. That image never leaves my mind. So the first place we were able to hide, I remember, because we were not able to follow the crowd to the stadium, because my mom's instincts told her that we should not keep going to the stadium. And we went to seek refuge in a family home. So the people who were close friends of our family. So as we stayed there, many of you know that during the genocide, you never knew who was kind. You never know how people's hearts changed, even though they were friends, even though they were very close to your families. You never know, because the propaganda of hatred against the Tutsi has been taught many decades and many years, even before I was born. So, and I remember when we went to the family, I thought they were going to keep us for a long time. Maybe we were going to stay there. Unfortunately, we didn't stay there. So they had to tell us to leave. And now, so I remember the first time when we were hiding in the bushes, that was very in the night when we left their home. And that was the first time I felt really scared and stayed in the bushes for the first time. So, and I remember my parents, I was with my parents, my dad's sister, one of my dad's siblings' sister, and we came early in the morning and hiding in the bushes somewhere in the river. It's called the Musogoro River. We're hiding in that area in the bushes. Sorghum plantations. And I remember the killers were surrounding the area because the killers already were searching. They were carrying machetes and clubs. And I remember sitting there with my parents, my aunt, my siblings. It was a scary moment to hear people just calling us, whatever you show yourselves, with these crazy songs they had against, calling us, cockroaches and snakes. And I never forget those chilling words, as a kid coming through your ears, your body, you don't know how to feel, you don't know how to think of what you're hearing. But as I was looking at my dad's face, I never forget the image of my dad where he was sitting scared and not knowing what to do. That image never leaves my mind. And my aunt was scared. That image also is always in my mind. And my mom, where she was sitting, and all my siblings, she was the only person who was strong enough to say, pray within your hearts, and stay together. Whatever happens, if all of us come out in the bushes, if we get close to whatever we are, whatever they are going to do to us, at least we're all together. So, and as I was listening, of course, my mom, I was trembling and afraid. My dad was scared. I could see how scared he was. I could see my aunt. And we came out of the bushes, and there was this young lady who was a Hutu. She lived with us in our home. And it happened to be that she stayed with us, and she didn't want to go to her home. And she came out, she ran, and we don't know what happened. Even now, we don't know if she's still alive. And my aunt also was afraid, and she ran and she was murdered. I didn't see it with my eyes, but some of my siblings saw what happened. So, and the rest of us who were together, the killers surrounded us. They were carrying machetes and clubs and all other weapons. And they started searching my dad's pockets. They took everything he had. And of course, we were scared. There were roadblocks everywhere. And we're wondering where we're going. And it was scary because already the killers were all over the place. And now, so we had to figure out somewhere to go and seek a refuge somewhere in someone's home who was kind enough to take us in his or her home. And I remember one of them, and because we went to several places during that period in 3 months, so because we had to stay in that area. So, and I remember one place we went, when we reached this home, my dad was carrying my younger brother in his hands, and the rest of us were behind him. And when we reached that home, and the young lady my dad taught, because being a teacher in the area, you have taught so many people. And my dad, this young lady took my younger brother from my dad's hand, and she said, "Follow me in the house." We followed her in the house, and my dad had to run in different directions. So, and as you know, we went in the house, the killers followed my dad. As we were inside the house, I was scared because my dad, was my best friend. Not only being my dad, I was very close to my dad. And I didn't know what was going to happen to my dad. And we went inside. They hid us in the ceiling in the house, with daddy. And the rest of the killers followed my dad. Later on in that evening, the killers who were coming outside, because where we're hiding in our home, they had a bar where they were sharing beers and, guagua and all these traditional beers. And they were talking how many people they murdered, how they are happy, they are killing Tutsis. And I never thought I was going to hear them talking how they killed my dad. So they followed my dad and they tortured him. I learned later how my dad was tortured. And this is a man who has taught their children, who has been kind. My dad was a very, very kind person. And if you go to a school where he taught, you hear many people talking about what he did and the person he was. Not only being a teacher, he was a very generous, kind person in the community. So he spent many hours, even sometimes running and hiding my mom, even during the weekend, to go to teach. When I would be closing, doors in the house, and my mom would say, "Close doors, I don't want your dad to leave before he eats." Sometimes he would just, go because he loved his job and he loved young people, and he spent a lot of time with young people. Now this man, he was tortured in the way I learned how he was tortured and killed simply because he was a Tutsi. And we didn't know what would happen to me. Now it's me, my mom, my siblings. And my mom had to figure out where to take as, children. And I remember many nights, many times we were hiding in the bushes and the sorghum plantations when the killers would be screaming in the hills, and we hear people screaming. And I remember it was a rainy season. We didn't have shoes. Our feet were swollen. And many times we're hungry. As you can imagine, my younger brother was 16 months old. He was always on my mom's chest and sometimes on her back. And sometimes, trying to ask, "I want to go home. I want food." And my mom sometimes didn't know what to do. So we tried to calm him. So And I remember one time my mom, she was figuring out who was going to help. And many times we went to homes where people, instead of helping us, they were called killers. There were times, sometimes killers would just, raise the machetes and want to kill us. I try to describe in my book many incidents of the things that have happened during that period. So I remember one time my mom, she didn't know what to do. She was wondering who was kind. So now she decided to take us to a family friend, someone she knew was a good friend of our family. Their kids were very close to our family, close to me because we were close to the same age. I remember when we knocked on their door, because we went behind through the bushes and came, in their home, and there was a killer who was standing outside. I think he was one of those people staying in our home, and he had a machete and a club. And I remember when we were knocking the door, my mom was trying the best she could. So please, try to help me, help my children and myself. So, and as she was knocking the door of their home, I remember this man of the household, we could hear people talking in the house, but no one came outside except that man. And when he came outside, he was wearing a towel around his waist. And where he lived, it was facing a high school, high school. And I remember he had a drum in his hand, and he started calling killers who were at the high school. And I was so afraid, because this man was somebody who I thought he was a good friend of my family. I thought he was who spent some time once in a while, some time with my dad. But now he's calling killers on us. So, and my mom will be begging, please don't, call killers, at least let us leave. So as we were trying to beg him, somehow, to me, I always say it's by the grace of God. So no one paid attention. So, and he went in the house. We didn't know what he was going to do. And as he went in the house, that killer who was standing with a machete in a club, waiting what to do, he decided to tell all of us to leave. And we left. That was a miracle. This man could have killed us. And my mom now was wondering, where am I going to take my children? So, and I remember another time we went to this home, and to show you how sometimes kids could be kind even if the parents are not kind. So, and it was very, very late in the dark, and my mom didn't know what to do. And we knocked on the door of the home. It was in the area my mom grew up, so in my maternal grandparents' side. So, and as we knocked the door of their home, my mom kept begging, the family, the wife was in the house and the husband was at the roadblock. And as we were begging this woman to open the door, somehow the children recognized my mom's voice, because she used to teach some of the kids in the household. And the kids started crying and begging their mother to open the door, because this woman was also part of the killing, even though she was home with the children, but the husband was at roadblock. So, and as we, the time went on and the kids begging, finally the woman opened the door. As she opened the door, she said, "I've never loved the Tutsi in my life. It's just because of my children." So that's how we're able to come in the house, because of the kids. So it shows you, like, even if the parents could be doing something, and as a kid, you also have the choice to listen, to the right thing. So it really touched my heart to see how these children were so kind enough to, to allow us in the house, even though, the parents were doing the opposite. So, and I remember because we hid in many, many places where people refused to help. Sometimes they would do horrible things, they would tell us horrible things, or even calling killers on us. And I remember one place we're hiding. It was a home of this man who was a very poor man. And we were hiding in his home. It was a little home. And the killers, a group of killers came there. And now these men were wondering what would happen because the house was very, very small. There's no other place you could hide us. And these people, automatically, they will see us in the house. So, and a group of killers, they came there. And as they came in the house, one of the leaders told my mother that if she could do something and give whatever, some of the things we had in our home, but already our home was completely destroyed. And but somehow before we left our home, there was a neighbor. We left the keys, we left some of the belongings, to them, to rescue things in our home. And my mom thought if she goes there, maybe they're going to help. This man, especially in that home, the young man was somebody my parents helped in school. And when his parents could not afford to pay tuition for him. So my mom thought maybe this young man would help. So he was, by the time the genocide happened, he was going to the National University of Rwanda. So, and the killers decided to take my mother, and the rest of us kids stayed there. So now I had to stay with my siblings, and the killers took my mother and my younger brother. As they took her, I was worried what would happen to my mom. And they took her. They got to that home. My mom begged that young man to help. Instead of helping, he said, no, I will never allow anything belonging to Tutsi, coming out in this house to help, because I would never find anywhere to socialize and be a good Hutu anymore. So, and this is a young man my mom considered to be a family. So now, because of how they were very close all these years, and my mom didn't know what to do. Of course, the killers had to decide what to do to my mother. So they took her and the rest of me and my siblings, the rest of us, me and my siblings in our house. The man who was hiding decided to tell me to leave, and we left. And when we left, I didn't know what to do. We're going through the bushes, figure out if our mom was still alive. I don't know if we were going to find her. I remember when we were going through the bushes, I was just hoping and praying we'll find her. And I was thinking about my siblings. One of my younger brother, Pascal, who was 7 years old. He was 7, but he was a very strong young man. At his age, he was able to tell me, let's to comfort me, to comfort all of us. And I comforted them. Of course, I was older than them, but at the same time, Pascal was stronger than almost all of us. So, and as we were figuring out, going through the bushes, we didn't know what to do, hiding. And later that night, we were able to reach to a home, a poor home. And in this family, they were very, very poor, but they had love. They were very kind. They took us in their home, and we were so cold, and they could see we were so hungry. And they had a fire around us in the house, and they gave us food, and they started telling us what happened to our mom. So, and they said, your mom, because the neighbor refused to help, killers were wondering what to do to your mom. So they were arguing. So that means everybody who knows the area in Rubengera, many people at that time, it was around the beginning of early in May, So many people have been murdered. So, and to find a person they knew, it's like a conversation everywhere. So they were arguing, what are we going to do to her? And they decided to leave her to a neighbor, not too far from our already destroyed home. And they left her there with my younger brother, deciding what to do. So, and I told them, whatever happens, because we don't know what will happen to us, we are going to see our mom. So I told them we are going to see our mom. And we went there and we found our mom. She didn't know we were still alive. And already the killers found out we were there. All of us were still, there. And they started, saying what they are going to do to us. And they planned to kill my brothers. And I remember, because already we didn't know what to do. And the most important thing for us is to be together, whatever happens. So, and when the plan was already made, and one of the killers was somebody who was my maternal grandparents' neighbor, and somebody coming in the family that was so close to my grandparents' family. This young man, I was reading a letter he wrote to my mom when he was in Gachacha, talking about how regretful he is to kill my brothers. And what my parents had been to him, and it was hard for me to read that letter again. And he came, he took my brothers, as you can imagine. They snatched my younger brother from my mom, and the rest of us behind our mom screaming and begging, and all of us to be taken. You mothers and parents in the room, imagine what my mother went through to see her little children being taken like lambs to be slaughtered. Imagine what she felt. Imagine what it was. Imagine the scene, how the scene was. And we didn't have the strength. Of course, they took my brothers. But before they took them, my mom took us in the room to pray. We were praying before the killers came, because we all the time we're praying. Whatever happens, if we die, we will go to heaven. So, and they took my brothers. I never forget them walking, holding each other's hands, holding my younger brother, crying, my little Bonfils crying, calling my mom, and it was not easy. And all of us screaming. They took them to our destroyed home, and they slaughtered them and threw their bodies in the septic tank of our home. Babataye muri fose boutique yo mu rugo bamaze kubatemagura nabi rw'agashinyaguro. Icyobo cyo muri toilette yo mu rugo. It was hard. The rest of us, my mom, my sister, were, as you can imagine, were begging to be killed, but they were waiting what to do to us. And we kept, of course, we didn't want to hide anymore. But at the same time, when you're about to survive, when things keep happening, you never know what will happen next. So as many of you know, many women and girls, rape was used as a weapon before they murdered many women and girls. They were brutally raped, tortured, and humiliated in the most horrific way. Many of you have read, books and people, and if you have gone to the memorials, you've heard many testimonies of survivors. That's why the reason why they didn't want to kill women right away. So, and I remember one place we went to hide. My mom was thinking, she didn't have anything to think about anymore. So all of us were, and we went there. And one of the killer, who was my neighbor, somebody I knew very well. So he came there. He was carrying a sword in his hands. I tried to describe many things happened before. And he took me, he grabbed me from everybody and dragged me. And the man of the household, instead of telling him to stop, doing what he was doing to me, my mom begging and screaming. And I was taken by this man to our already destroyed home. Of course, I had to, if you read the book, I managed to detail everything. That was my way of healing, beginning my healing journey. He took me there and torn my clothes and all the things I tried to describe it without going into detail, raped by him. And he was thinking maybe other people would come and destroy me more and probably do worse, because, during the genocide, many women were raped more than one person. I have a friend, she told me she doesn't know how many people who raped her. People, I know people who even went through worse than I went through, who have been tortured by more than many, 5, people, they don't know how many. So, and some of them were killed. Others were left, to die with grief and pain. And this man, probably he thought maybe other people would torture me more. Somehow I managed to see my mom. And as you can imagine, a mother seeing her daughter not too long ago, she lost her beloved children. And she sees what happened to my body. She took care of my injuries with that woman. It was sometimes, I don't know how my mother managed to do that, to be strong. So, and of course we didn't want to hide anymore. But at the same time, there were people were talking about, Jeanne and her kids, now she has 2 left. Everybody was talking about who's alive and how my brothers were murdered and everybody, who were murdered in the area. So, and somehow we managed to, later on, because the story is a long story, we managed to find a person in Muslim community who hid us in his home, and there was that's how we're able, for the remainder of the genocide, we're able to survive. And I was my mom, my sister, and of course, it was not very easy even to get there. Many times killers managed to come there and trying to want to kill us in that place, but he stood up. He didn't want anybody to harm us anymore. And then we were able to join the RPF, and we felt now the comfort and now we survived because they stopped the genocide, and we're able to join them where they were, and now we felt now alive and carrying the trauma within you. And for me, I was very I was a sad girl. I didn't know how to behave and how to be happy, and we survived. It was my mom, now my sister. Almost everybody on my dad's side was killed. My dad's siblings, my grandparents, all of them were killed. And luckily on my mom's side, there are a few people who survived. My cousins, one of them, you saw the book, Dr. Asani Yen's showing. Now me, a mother who has two children who are traumatized, and it was not easy for her, but she had to go back to teach, and it was hard for my mother. But one of the things that I'm so grateful for is to see how strong my mom was. Despite the pain, she kept encouraging me to love. Despite all the suffering she was enduring within herself, all of us were suffering from, she went back to teach some of the children of the people who have harmed our families, who have even did, things to many people in the area. So, but she had the strength to show them love, despite the pain she carried within herself. I learned that from her. So, and it was not easy. And learning so many women like myself, some of them who were not even able to function physically, and they were tortured in the most horrific way. Some of them who later on found out they were HIV positive, and they carry the virus that remind them everything they have endured during that period in 1994. And being one of those women, I found out I was HIV positive. Now it was going to be a constant reminder of the things I've endured during that period. So, and it's not easy, to talk about it. And for me, when I talk everything that I've gone through the genocide, one of the things that was hard for me to talk about is rape. And many women suffer in silence. There are women who will never tell you, even now. I know some people who have kept that with them, and they don't have the strength yet, because it's hard. It's not easy. And the pain you carry, and you can't find the words to describe how it makes you feel. And if you hear someone trying the best they could in their own way to share that painful experience, even sometimes don't know how to talk about it, create that space for that person. Hear them. Don't mind how they tell you what happened, because it's not easy. You can't, sometimes even myself finding the words to describe my pain, it took me many years because I went to therapy. I had the courage to go to therapy, and like you heard from Dr. Beth, all the things you go through in your body, and it was affecting me a lot until I went to therapy and had to relieve all the things that I didn't know how to talk about it. But therapy really helped a lot in so many ways. So, and because of that, I'm able to listen to my fellow survivors. I could not have had the strength to even hear that. I listen to them. Whoever has the courage to tell me, I sit and listen, and I don't have to do anything else, because I know how important it is for somebody to create that safe space for you, to give you that moment to listen to you, because it opens the door for you to start your healing journey. When you hear, for me, I'm so grateful because my mother was there. There are people who don't have any parent. Some of you in the room who have lost entire families, who have lost parents, and whenever you needed a shoulder to cry on, you didn't have nobody. At least I had my mother to lean on her shoulder and cry. Despite her pain, she created that space for me, and we were there for each other. So At least for me, when I talk about my painful experience, I always carry that young lady, that mom, that person who has nobody, who have never shared that story, or even some of them who have shared it, but they carry a lot of trauma and the consequences are too great to bear. So, and as you've heard, AVEGA does a lot of work. AVEGA has done so much work to help survivors, but it's not easy to do it on your own. So you have to have people to help you, because rape and sexual assault affects women in so many ways, and the pain you carry within yourself affects you in the long term. Some of them who live with HIV, others who have had physical, because of the torture they've endured physically, in the most horrific way. It affects them not only physically, psychologically, even if you've never, nobody sees physically how you've been hurt. Psychologically, the long-term effects, manifest itself outside, because you carry that pain, the trauma within you. So it's so, important to, to take care of, make sure you support this initiative, because it helps to look at those illnesses, because illnesses, there are many different types of the illnesses comes from trauma and all the things like, being sexually assaulted like that. So, and for me, I encourage you to support and make sure you be there, for these women who are resilient, who have been able to live all these years with the pain within themselves, and all these years have been able to even be there for other people, even though they were carrying the pain within themselves. But be there, support this initiative, and make sure you look at the links and where you can contribute. And if you find that machine, the ultrasound machine, to look and take care of that, it will help them live longer. And also, because it's not easy. It's not easy, and AVEGA will not be able to do that on their own. They have done a lot of amazing work and to support these women. And we need to be there for them and support this initiative. So for me, like Edith was mentioning, you find the links and Gofundme and other places on Ibuka USA. So and they would guide you to be able to support. And even if you see the amount of dollars that needs to be achieved, but you can do more than that. So because we need to be there for our people and to take care of their well-being, because it's so important. And also to to tell your friends, share it with everybody about it. So, and we should be there for them. And for me, when I talk about it, I know how important it is to find the care. I've been able to go to therapy. I know how important it has helped me in my healing journey. So I know that they need that support. It's so important when you are being taken care of in your heart, in your mind and body and soul, you are able to live longer. You are able to have a healthy, fulfilling life. So for me, I would not have been able to to even talk about, to tell you about what I've gone through if I didn't do that. So I am so grateful and I appreciate life, even though I live with HIV, it's no longer a threat to me anymore. Whenever I take a pill in the morning, it's no longer like what I'm not what happened to me. So I see it like a vitamin to me. So, but that took me a long time. So that's why we need to be there for each other, to support that person to love themselves. So I love myself, I love my body, but it took me many years to be able to love my body I am in. So I every day I get up, I'm so grateful. I appreciate that I'm here. And whenever I speak, I don't speak for myself, I speak for others. because I have to be there for my fellow survivors who are not able to do it on their own. So, but one message I want to leave with you, I know it's not very easy, but that message has helped me in my journey of healing. So it's like a mantra. No matter what horrible circumstances you may face in your life, never lose hope. For losing hope is the beginning of your own self-defeat. And I want to remind you this: take care of yourselves, take care of your hearts, and remember to create a safe space for each other. And when somebody gives you a listening ear, it opens a door to your healing journey. There's a quote I've heard from Dr. Maya Angelou. There's no greater agony than bearing an untold story within you. So thank you very much for having me and for your kind attention. Kandi mpore turi kumwe, mwiteho, mwikunde, kandi dufashe abavandimwe muri uru rugendo, dufashe AVEGA muri uru rugendo rwo gufasha aba badamu bahuye n'ihohoterwa muri ifatwa ku ngufu ryabaye ku badamu muri Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi. Nitwita kuri iyi initiative tukabafasha kubona iriya ultrasound machine, ni ukuri bizabafasha cyane, kuko ihohoterwa ryakorewe abadamu ryabagizeho ingaruka zikomeye kandi babana n'ubuzima bwabo, kandi byabafekise mu buryo bunini. Ntabwo ari gusa ku mubiri inyuma no ku mutima, utashobora kubona ko byamubayeho inyuma, bitamugaragaraho inyuma, ariko burya ibyo kuko byakwangije n'imbere bikugiraho ingaruka n'inyuma, n'ubundi burwayi bwinshi buza bwigaragaza inyuma. Rero mwese ndabasabye mwite kuri iyo initiative yatangijwe na Ibuka, mubwire inshuti zanyu, mubwire n'abandi, tubafashe, kuko umuryango AVEGA Agahozo wakoze akazi gakomeye ko kwita ku barokotse Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi, cyane cyane ku badamu n'abakobwa bahuye n'ihohoterwa n'ifatwa ku ngufu ryabagizeho ingaruka zikomeye kandi zikirimo muri iyi minsi kibakurikirana n'uyu munsi. So ndabashimiye ko mwantumiye, kandi mukomeze mwiyiteho, mwikunde, kandi muhaberane, buri wese ajye abera mugenzi w'ugutwi kwa mugenzi we. Niba umuntu atangiye kukubwira ibyamubayeho, mutega ugutwi, umufashe, kuko umufungurira umuryango wo gutangira gukira ibikomere bye. Tuhaberane, twumvane, kandi twite ku mibereho yacu y'imbere, kugira ngo tuzagire ubuzima bwiza, n'abadukomokaho nabo bagire ubuzima bwiza. Murakoze cyane.
Biragoye kugira ikintu umuntu avuga nyuma y'ubuhamya nk'ubu ngubu, ariko icyiza ni uko mu buhamya bwe harimo ubutumwa bw'icyizere, ubutumwa bwo kwikunda, ubutumwa bwo gutegana amatwi, kubera aho mugenzi wawe, waba waraciye muri Jenoside, waba utarayiciyemo, ufite inkunga ushobora gutera umuntu umutega ugutwi. Arakoze cyane rero kuri kuba yagize umuhate wo gutanga ubuhamya nk'ubwo ngubwo, cyane cyane ko hari n'abandi bantu benshi biba bitoroheye. Hari nk'uko yabivuze rero, mu rwego rwo gushyigikira abapfakazi ba Jenoside, ngira ngo murabona kuri gahunda mufite hano kuri urupapuro hariho QR barcode ushobora gukora donation kugira ngo tubashe gushyigikira ababyeyi bacu bagizweho ingaruka na Jenoside, tubagurira iyi mashini, iyi ultrasound machine izabafasha mu buzima bwabo bwa buri munsi, kugira ngo barusheho kugira ubuzima, iminsi yo kubaho kwabo yiyongere. Murakoze rero, turimo turagenda tugera ku musozo. We are coming to the end of Kwibuka event today, and I would like to take this opportunity to invite to this platform Lawrence Manzi, who is the Deputy Chief of Mission in the embassy, Rwanda Embassy in the United States of America to come forward and make his closing remarks. Thank you.
Muraho. Nanjye ndabanza mbakomeze nk'uko MC yabivuze, biragora cyane kuvuga nyuma y'ubuhamya bw'umuntu wacitse ku icumu, cyane cyane kuvuga nyuma y'ubuhamya bwatanzwe na mushiki wacu Konsole Nishimwe, ariko ndagerageza. Nyakubahwa Yehoyada Mbangukira, uyobora umuryango w'Abanyarwanda muri Amerika, nyakubahwa Jean de Dieu, Niyomugabo na timu yawe muyobora uyu muryango mwiza wa Arizona, w'Abanyarwanda ba Arizona, Madame Edith Mugiraneza, wungirije perezida muri Ibuka US, abahagarariye amadini nababonye hano n'amatorero, nakoze kwitabira kuza gufasha umuryango wacu, Banyarwanda, Abanyarwandakazi, inshuti zacu mwese muri hano. Ndabanza nshimire Warren Dennis na Africa Business Club batuhaye icyicaro cyiza, mwakoze cyane. Nanone ndaza kubasaba nyirango mvange indimi kubera murabizi urubyiruko rwacu ariko n'abashyitsi dufite baze kugira bimwe nabo bamenya by'amateka yacu, ariko ntarabikora. Nanone nzi ko ari abantu baraye amajoro bategura ibikorwa, bashyizemo ubushobozi bushoboka bwose ngo bibe, turabashimiye. Naje ntumwe ndi kumwe n'umugenzi wanjye dukorana, umunyamabanga wa mbere Francis Murindwa, yonyango ahaguruka bakakubona. Twatumwe na nyakubahwa ambasada Dr. Matilda Mukantabana ndetse na team embassy yose, baradutumye ngo tubihanganishe kandi tunabakomeze ngo twibuke twiyubaka. Ndabizi murakoze. Dean Sanjeev Kagram yagiye, ariko we yaduhaye umwanya wakaza kubana natwe, ni iby'igiciro, ndetse na timu ye yose abahari, no gushyigikira umuryango wacu w'Abanyarwanda hano. Ibyo byose we don't take it for granted. To all our friends and guests, your solidarity with the people of Rwanda as we remember this critical part of our history speaks volumes. I thank you for your friendship and support and solidarity. Previous speakers have done a great job of contextualization of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. So my role will just be to add a few pointers, but mostly try to do a call for action. banyakubahwa, ntawe ushobora kuvuga agahinda k'ibyabaye ku banyarwanda kurusha uwarokotse jenoside. Uretse ibyo baciyemo nkuko twabyumvishije, ariko benshi babana n'ingaruka zabyo. Bibasaba iteka guhitamo uburyo bwo kubaho. Imbaraga nyinshi zishyirwa mu kwiyakira no gushaka kuba gusiga kubaho ubuzima buri impactful. Aba bantu tuvuga bazengurutswe cyangwa banabonye ubuzima bubashwanyagurikiraho mu mpande. The failure of society around them, the state, the church, the family, all collapsing around them. The international community abandoning them, leaving them for the dead. And we still ask of them to build that society, to help us rebuild Rwanda, to forgive, to unite and reconcile. Just know we know how, or we, as we were asked to imagine how hard it is. The story shared by Consore, it's just a glimpse. I love the idea of her asking us to imagine, because you can only imagine. The steps, the bushes she talked about, it was gruesome, but they endured all their 100 days and nights. Not her alone, as she said, but on behalf of all the survivors. Console, we wanted to thank you for agreeing to carry the flame of memory to help the world never to forget what exactly happened, but most importantly, to make sure the victims are never forgotten. They are known by name. Thank you. I wanted to also thank Ibuka, US, for all the support they give our communities all the year long, but especially during the commemoration period. But the most important thing I think this year we have is this campaign to support AVEGA. It has a spirit that we have to own, that the best way to keep the survivors and the victims in memory is to actually support a life that was affected. It's important to let the survivors know, tubabwire ko batari bonyine, tubabwire ko nubwo ababo bapfuye ariko tukiriho, baradufite, bafite abavandimwe. Inshuti zacu, ngira ngo Dr. Basaninyenzi asa nko wabiciyemo neza avuga ubuzima bwari mu Rwanda mbere ya Genocide. But it's important to recall that Rwanda's political leaders pursued a policy of vilification and dehumanization aimed at the Tutsi population that laid the ground for genocide. By examining the political and historical context that made genocide in Rwanda possible, we discern lessons that can help us to fight mass atrocities everywhere. As we know, genocide is a crime against all humanity, and we share the obligation of the prevention and, where possible, intervention where necessary. Regrettably, we as people, we seem to forget, or we fail to learn from history. I know in this room, there are people that come from the region that are our neighbors. The current situation in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo has raised concerns with ongoing hostilities and violence towards Rwandophones, most especially the Tutsi people. Again, no one will say they were never warned. It is well documented by the UN, by regional organizations. Ariko reka mbahindukiye nk'Abanyarwanda. Tugomba kwereka isi ko hari icyo twize. Kandi bizatangirira aho dutuye. Abaturanyi banyu nibatakamba ngo bafite ababo barimo kwicwa, tugomba guhaguruka natwe tukandika amabaruwa bashaka ko twandika. Tutabikoze, nyuma amateka natwe zatubwira ko twirengagije igihe cyo gutabara abo twagomba gutabara. Ibyo tutumva ijambo international community twumve ngo biri kure yacu, oya, biri hamwe nacu aho dukora mu byo turimo byose. Uplifting a nation that was left desolate and a traumatized community required more than a young government who had just inherited that mayhem or any other administration for that sake could ever do by itself what was necessary to be done. We appreciate friends who stood with us and have walked alongside us in our national rebuilding and development trajectory. 29 years on, the task of meaningful reconciliation seemed insurmountable for Rwanda, let alone the challenge of rebuilding broken institutions, reviving a dead economy, and restoring a sense of home among a despairing and fearful population. Under the leadership of His Excellency President Kagame, our liberators, the Rwandan Patriotic Front and Army, we have managed to exceed expectations. Due to the tireless determination of the people of Rwanda, we refused to accept that genocide would be the final word. We refused to give up each other. We refused to give up on our country. Instead, as His Excellency Kagame said, we made a choice to stay together, to be accountable to ourselves, and to think big. We built our institutions from ground up. The country that had a history of impunity that was uprooted from its roots. Now Gacaca went into history to have helped us do what seemed impossible through our culture. through who we are as people. Muryango nyarwanda, inshuti zacu, reka twibuke twiyubaka. Iyo niyo ntero kandi niyo nyikirizo tugomba kugenderamo. Nicyo kiduha imbaraga, nibyo byonyine uko turimo gutura muri iki gihugu gikomeye, nibyo dufite badafite, ni nabyo bashobora kutwigiraho. Ibyo rero reka tutabiryamana ngo twumve ari byo kwihishana, ahubwo reka tubikoreshe. Reka tubikoreshe gufasha isi no kubaka aho twahisemo kugira iwacu handi muri iki gihugu. Izo ni indangagaciro udashobora kuvana mu ishuri cyangwa kuvana ahandi. Ibyo dufite byadufasha kuba unique aho dutuye. Your presence here speaks to your determination to make genocide a tragedy of the past. Let us rededicate ourselves to ending genocide and teach every child that there is only one race, the human race. We must never let our nationalities, ethnicities, religions, or political, cultural, economic differences divide us. It is our commitment that there will not be ambiguity left for denialism to dwell or thrive. And that's why, as a people of Arizona, there is a need for commitment to set the historical perspectives right. As Arizonians, we ask that you join the states of Utah and Massachusetts to declare April 7th as a day of remembrance or reflection of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. Above all, though, let us learn to use the right name of this genocide. It is the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. It's not the Rwandan genocide. It's not the Rwandan genocide in Rwanda. It is a genocide committed against the people, the Tutsi. Let us share that and be informed of what that means. Because the denial hides in that ambiguity. It thrives. It confuses. It gives wrong reasons for the genocide. But when we stand up together and set these historical facts right, the world will follow us. Together, let our footsteps trace the path of our history, and together reshape path to a dignified and renewal Rwanda. Reka nsoreze ku rubyiruko rwacu. Amateka yacu reka muyagira yanyu. Muzehe yageze kubivuga neza, hano afite ikiniga avuga ku basaza. Avuze ngo muzibuke, muzahore mwibuka. Ni umurage twese dukwiye kubahita tumuhindukira tukamubwira ngo turabyemeye. Urubyiruko rwacu, abize n'abatize, abakora ibyo mukora byose, nta n'ubuhangange buzaruta igihe uzafata aya mateka ukayabyazamo ndetse ukayagira intwaro nziza yo guhindura isi around you. Rwose ndasoreza aho kandi tubijeje ubufatanye tuzabashyigikira icyo muzashaka cyose, ibyo mutafite tuzabishakana tubigereho, ariko mukore, twigishe, dufashe isi kumenya amateka yacu n'icyo bayigiraho. Murakoze, murakarama, dukomeze twibuke twiyubaka, dushyigikire abacitse ku icumu mu miryango dutuyemo, ndetse n'abo bose ibyo barimo kutubwira byo gufasha abakura ibishoboka, ibitekerezo byiza, tubishyigikire, bamenye ko aho abandi batari ko duhari. Imana ibahe umugisha.
Urakoze cyane Manzi. Abantu bo muri embassy muri abavandimwe bacu ba bugufi, iteka mwifatanya natwe. Nagira ngo nse nk'uwica protokole gato, ubundi sinajyaga kuvuga nyuma yawe, ariko nshimangire kiriya gikorwa twabwiwe cyo gutera inkunga. Ultrasound ni ecography, ni icyuma cya ecography I believe, ni ultrasound machine. Ubundi umuryango uhagarariye abacitse ku icumu ni Ibuka, ariko habayeho umwihariko w'abamama w'igitsina gore kubera umwihariko w'amateka ya Genocide n'ingaruka byabagizeho, kuba ko kubafata ku ngufu, kubakorera ibyamfura mbi byakozwe nkana, kandi bikorwa ari nk'imbunda yo kugira ngo bababaze. Ubwo bubabare babuciyemo icyo gihe, n'ubu babana nabwo nk'uko mwabyumvise mu buhamya bwa konsole. Rero nagira ngo rwose mbasabe, kwa kundi dusanzwe tubikora nk'abanyarizona, dusanzwe tugira ubuntu, tugira dukora twikorera, iki gikorwa mbasabe tugishyiremo imbaraga. Ultrasound machine ikenewe ni igura ibihumbi 44, ariko nzi neza ko tubahaye n'eshatu, n'enye, n'eshanu bazikoresha, barazikeneye. Bafite za klinike mu Rwanda zita kuri abo bantu bahuye n'icyo kibazo, bafashwe ku ngufu bagasigirwa uburwayi butandukanye biturutse kuri ayo mateka mabi ya Genocide. Rero nagira ngo mbasabe, ikindi kintu nagira ngo ndenzeho nuko Ibuka US ifite status bita 501c, ni 501c C3. Nuvuga ngo amafaranga yose donating hariya ari tax deductible, aho kugira ngo uzayahe leta, ahubwo wayaha bari ababyeyi kugira ngo tubafashe, kugira ngo bongere iminsi yo kubaho, banabeho ubuzima bugize. Utabishobora mu buryo bwo kuba wenda atamenyereye kuba yadonatinga kuri Gofundme, utumenyeshe, turagufasha. Ikindi nubishobora rwose nushyiraho ibihumbi 20-30 ni byiza, nushyiraho 500, nushyiraho 100, nushyiraho n'amadolari 5, ayo mafaranga yose arageraho agwire, kandi turadukoze neza, turadukoze igikorwa cyiza. Niko kwibuka kwiza, kwiyubaka, dufasha abacitse ku icumu rya Genocide. Murakoze cyane, niyo message nagira ngo nimfasayizingeho. Mwakoze cyane, ndabashimiye.
Arakoze gushimangira icyo kintu. Nkuko rero mwabyumvise, tugeze ku musozo wo gusoza umunsi wo kwibuka Genocide yakorewe Abatutsi 1994, umunsi twakoze hano muri Arizona. Uyu munsi tukaba tugeze ku musozo, ariko turacyari kumwe na Munyanshoza kugira ngo twongere tumusabe agaruke aturirimbire indi ndirimbo. Turaba tukicaye, hanyuma nirangira turashyiramo izindi zisanzwe tubone gutangira gusohoka. Murakoze, umwanya n'uwawe.
Murakoze, reka turimbane n'imitwe Nyanza ya Butare, hanyuma tujyane mu nganzo. Murakoze.
Abana bawe baseka bose, n'aya mateka y'indongozi. Uraho Nyanza ya Butare uraho. Abana bawe na za nshuti zawe tuje gusangira, kwibuka amage, kwibuka abacu bazize kuba abantu, bambe bazize iki? Kuba umuntu utazirwa. Rwanyagapfumu twakundaga, Nyirumuringa we na Mushumu, kwibuka Kamanzi na Mundere, na Mikara nkawe na Gusenga. Twakunzwe Kirenga, Kayumba na Rusagara, Gasasira Gakwaya na Rugambwa, Gisagara Mubirigi Azariya na Rugema. Abo bose bagiye tukibakeneye. Wari izingiro ry'ubwiza Nyanza ya Butare, warashavuye twaje kunamira wawe, inzirakarengane. Amashusho ntasibama ku mutima, Mwogoyogaga mw'imirambo, icyuzi cya Dibwa gitinze, inzirakarengane ziboroga. Ikizira kizira cyarimwitswe mwima, na Mushirarungu yambika irungu, Rwesero rwesaga inkindi gusumba, uvuga agahinda birenza amagambo. Unyengango atanazi n'akagorora, Munyankindi we n'amakuru, ibuka Kabandana na Silivestre, n'Akagambirwa na Tarisisi. Turibuka Karemera na Ntamwete, Gahigiwe na Ngarambe, Mazimpaka na Humure, Gatera Enoki na Fatikaramu, Matiyasi na Kagurube. Kubibagirwa ni ugucumura. Wari izingiro ry'ubwiza Nyanza ya Butare, warashavuye twaje kunamira wawe, inzirakarengane. Gacuka budikaga imvura yeza, Musasama n'uburiri bwayo, mwacumuye iki mwaziraga iki? Muhekurwa n'inkoramano. Rwabicuma yacu itagiraga ibicumuro, Nkebutse Kibinja yiciwe n'uduhinja, Nyamiyaga kaga kibasiye uti, ariko mwazize iki? Mbe Nyanza ya Butare. rwabuhungu na ntagugura kabera we na munyagashe Ibuka gabandana na sirite amutaga ndawe na nkusi twibuke gatera uyeye na kanamugire Gregoire na mudacura Kayitankore na Rubirigita Rwabuyonza Ruhamiriza Gashiruka na Kazungu aho hose urabibuka wari izingiro ry'ubwiza Nyanza ya Butare warashavuye twaje kunamira wawe inzirakarengane Mangamanza amasazenga kavumu kavugaga w'impundu wendo nenda kurira nkuzi umutima wanyu muteze rurema nyamagana ko amagana k'induru zakwibasiye zitemana y'i Rwanda Ganda kararwaga n'abandi berusatira intimbi bageze Rutayisire we nangamije mujejende na muberuka Ibuka Gahonzire na Karibwe namutaganda we na nkusi ndavuga ngo ntereshi wita na Kayitani mukuru arinda na muganga nyamaswa na gakuba Baritazari Wilson na Kagabo muratubwirira abandi nkamwe ko tubatashya kandi twibuka igihe cyose turirimbane wari izingiro ry'ubwiza Nyanza ya Butare warashavuye twaje kunamira wawe inzirakarengane twese nyamara Nyanza urafite intwari reka dutwaze tunga wacu dufasha abasigaye ahakomeye kongera kubaho nibwo butwari 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 murakoze
yahageze ananiwe atabasha no kuvuga kuko we yahageze bamaze kumutema yahageze ari kumwe n'utwana twe tune iyo wababonaga bahari nkurikirane yageze kuri bariyeri abo yahasanze bamukubaho uruziga we yageze kuri bariyeri abo yahasanze bamukuba uruziga yari afite imbaraga nke maze ariyicarira akana ke ko mu mugongo kari kakomeje kurira kamusabaga ibyo kurya maze akabura icyamuha bamusabye k'uwo mwana yarahetse yamururutsa uwo mubyeyi abasaba imbabazi ati umwana wanjye ararwaye aratakamba basaba imbabazi ati umwana wanjye ararwaye bamujishuye uwahetse uwo mubyeyi amanika ukuboko ati mbere yuko munyica reka ngira icyo mbasaba ati ndabizi ko munyica ndabibona ko nta makiriro ati ndabizi ko munyica ndabibona ko nta makiriro kunyica ni munyice ariko mundekera abana niba namwe muri ababyeyi nimundekera abana niba namwe mwarabyaye ndabinginze nimundekera abana iryo jambo rya nyuma yavuze iteka rimpora ku mutima iryo jambo uwo mubyeyi yavuze ngurwo urukundo rw'ababyeyi ati kunyica ni munyice ariko mundekera abana ati kunyica ni munyice ariko mundekera abana uko bakubitaga uwo mubyeyi abana be nabo barabibonaga akana ke kabucura karamuhamagaye akana ke kari igitambambuga karamuhamagaye katari kose mama nk'ubu turaziriki nibongera kugukubita ndabarega kuri papa nibongera kugukubita ndabarega kuri papa iryo jambo rya nyuma yavuze yavuze iteka rimora ku mutima. Iryo jambo uwo mubyeyi yavuze ngurwo urukundo rw'ababyeyi. Ati kunyica nimunyice ariko mundekera abana. Ati kunyica nimunyice ariko mundekera abana. Nawe se nkundira nkubaze, nkundira nkubaze, wowe wacitse kw'icumu, abawe mujya gutandukana, mbese ubwo ujya wibuka irya nyuma mwavuganye, cya gihe babirukankana musezeranaho, mbese mwavuganye ngwiki? Umwana wawe mujya gutandukana, cya gihe hajya kugenda mwavuganye ngwiki? Umufasha wawe mujya gutandukana, agusezeraho we mwavuganye ngwiki? Ababyeyi bawe mujya gutandukana, ababyeyi bawe mwavuganye ngwiki? Iryo jambo rya nyuma bakubwiye jya urizirikana, kiriya ni igihango. Iryo jambo wawe yakubwiye cya gihe ajya kugenda, jya urizirikana, igihe rigufasha kumwibuka, kiriya ni igihango. Igihe rigufasha kumwibuka, kiriya ni